My name is Dr. Michael Brown, and this is 3 Words, a bite-sized podcast about the simple and yet very strategic choices that all of us can make in order to be fully alive. And today in the studio, we have Sammy Adebiyi, and we're not just talking about being fully alive as individuals, but what does it look like to be fully alive as families? How do we create rhythms and routines to actually become the very best version of ourselves as families? Listen in. Sammy Adebiyi, it is so great, my friend, to have you in the studio again. In fact, it is July, because July is the only month that I can get you into the studio with me. And obviously, we've been friends for what now? Over 10 years.
Long time.
But most of our viewers and listeners, if they've, obviously, we've done 3 or 4 episodes together in the 189 that have been out there. But probably many of our recent listeners and viewers have no idea who you are. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Real quick, my name is Sammy, born and raised in Lagos, Nigeria. And I like to say I am a minority in a sorority. And so I'm married to my wife, Ashley, and we got 5 daughters. Even our dog is a girl. So it's just me and the ladies. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Which actually ties into our conversation today.
Yes.
You chose these 3 words, which are...
Practice family rhythms.
So my friend, this is only the second time in all of our episodes where we've actually focused on family and parenting and all of these kind of conversations. We recently did an episode called Raise Strong Kids. And now we're talking about family rhythms. And friend, I have known you long enough to actually watch you up close and from afar, and just how serious you are about investing and building into your family. And so I can't wait to have this conversation with you and for our listeners and viewers to join us. Why is this so important to you?
Well, first of all, you know this, I believe that really at the end of the day, we're all a sum total of our most consistent rhythms, right? Like that's what your life is made up of. And so I just realized a long time ago that for me, I think the most loving thing that I can do for my family is build rhythms that bring the best out of them. And so I'm like, if that's the most loving thing I can do, I'm going to put all my energy into creating rhythms that are going to lead us to the kind of culture and life that we want to be as a family.
Well, I'll tell you what, as a life coach, when you start talking rhythms and routines, I get excited because I'm like, yes, we are the accumulation of our choices. And sometimes it's hard.
That's much better than I did.
No, you said it perfectly. But I'm curious though. Obviously, Teresa and I recently dropped an episode entitled Draft Your Will. We talked about how we love as well with 9 kids. You got 5, we got 9. We love building experiences for our families, but we're probably not as good as you are in regards to developing rhythms. So I want to hear about some of these rhythms that you have in the Adebiyi family.
So I'll take a step further. The first thing that we did was to think of about 4 to 5 core values for our family. So just say, hey, this is the kind of family that we want to be. We want to look back 30, 40 years and go, that's what's true about our family. And then we came up with some rhythms that we felt were going to lead to the kind of behaviors that lead to that kind of a lifestyle. And so I'll give you an example. One of the things that we knew that we wanted to be true of our family is that we wanted our kids to be friends. Like we wanted friendship to be a core part of not only our kids' relationship with each other, but even with us. And so, so we're like, okay, so what does it look like for us to create those rhythms? Well, you kind of have to spend a lot of time together to build a friendship. And we realized that a lot of life wasn't really gonna do that naturally. And so one thing we came up with the rule of 2. And so my wife and I basically just decided that we're not gonna schedule any sports, extracurricular things more than 2 nights out of a week. And we're going to try and leave 2 weekends out of a month without anything scheduled, which is crazy because you know how it is with sports and all the kids. And we just said, hey, if it doesn't fit in those 2 nights, then we're just not going to do it because we needed the rhythm of spending time together to be able to build the kind of relationships that we wanted in our family. So,
wow. I'm already being put to shame because you and Dr. Bo Johnson, when we had him in the studio, he was talking about his family core values. You're talking about your family core values. And I'm sitting here now going, wait, I only have 2 kids left in the home, and I need to come quickly. We need some stated core values we can hang on the wall. What are some other of your core values?
So rest is a big one. Work hard, rest hard, play harder. And so we just feel like in order to be healthy, we have to rest. And so we just built rest into every day and every weekend of our family. And so we go, and this is crazy. Some people would think it's crazy. Again, this is the kind of family we want to be. So we will go to Disney World and we will go back and have rest time at the resort we're staying at and then go back to Disney World. And so our kids, for all of their lives, every weekend, when they're not in school every day, they have at least an hour and a half or 2 hour rest. And so some sleep, some go and do crafts, some write, some read, but like it's just a normal part of what we do is we work hard and then we rest.
Okay, I got to talk more about this. So you say every day, all your kids have rest time.
Yeah. So
even when you travel to Disney World.
Yes. Even when we're on vacation. So a month ago, my wife and I took our kids. We went to Phoenix to see my mom, went to California to Disneyland. And on both trips, my mom knows, well, all right, we got to go back for rest time. And we go back to the condo and we get an hour and a half of rest time. The kids do, my wife and I do. It's just, that's all my kids know now, you know? And what I think it's awesome about this rhythm, about really any rhythm you create, is that it works regardless of personality. So Eden, who is 12, hasn't napped since she was 1. She never naps. Nora is 10. Nora will nap 2 hours a day if I give her the time. But for both of them, like the rhythm of rest has worked because they both need it. And so, yeah.
Now, do you take a nap or rest
time every day? I
do
not take a nap, but you know what? As a parent, it is nice to know that I have 90 minutes to 2 hours every single day, every weekend, no matter what we do, to just be able to breathe and rest and hang out with Ashley.
And I just laugh when you talk about, is it Disneyland or Disney World? Where'd you guys
Disneyland
go?
Was this last one.
Okay,
we've done both. Yeah.
Well, it's funny though, because whenever I talk to dads who have done Disneyland or Disney World, they said the best decision they ever made was taking their kids to Disneyland and Disney World, and the worst decision they ever made was taking their kids to Disneyland or Disney World.
Right.
It's a trip, but not a vacation.
That's right.
But with your rhythms, you made it probably feel more like
sustainable.
A vacation.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Ooh, I like that word, sustainable.
Yeah.
Because what you're suggesting is rhythms and routines to practice family rhythms will enable your core values to be sustainable, but also your family to be sustainable.
That's right.
I'm going to hit pause right now in the midst of my conversation with Sammy to remind us all that it takes a village to raise a family. And I think what I would suggest right now is if there are other families that you're connected to, that you would like to have this conversation together, what it looks like to cultivate and create daily rhythms for your families, I would suggest you share that with that family. Now back to our episode.
So generosity is another one that we do. And so again, this is like, we have like 4 or 5 things, but it's just like, hey, we want to be a family that's generous and we want to make sure that we're always sharing. So I tell my kids, Adebiyi share. That's what we do. Adebiyi is we work hard, we play hard, we rest, and so yeah, we've just built rhythms of generosity into basically every kind of income, anything that we do. So if I do a tour, if I speak somewhere, my wife already has the thing. It's like, here's how much is going out before we even think of how much we're keeping. And we get our kids to be a part of that experience too. And so they get to do things to earn money, and then they get to be a part of experiencing and just blessing other people too. So.
Well, and you are a big deal. You do travel and do a lot of speaking and conferences. I won't go into your huge resume, but you literally travel the world and you're kind of a celebrity. I feel very honored to have you in the studio right now. But with that said, I mean, obviously I've known you always as an incredibly generous person, but I love the fact that you've taken this core value and you infused it all the way into your children.
Yeah.
So you're saying they get to be a part of generosity.
Yes.
And you're giving them, I'm assuming, allowance or ways to earn money, but then they have to give a certain part of that generously.
And
to other things.
So they know like, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to earn this. And then part of it is we're going to think of creative ways to be generous. And then some of it is also when my wife and I decide that we want to do some generous things, we just involve them in them. Just say, hey, we're going to go get this for this family and we're going to do that for that family. Because there's just so much joy in it. And I think that's the thing that I always have to go back with these core values that inform your rhythms, is that it's so life-giving. Like rest is life-giving. Generosity is life-giving. Friendship is life-giving. And so once they become rhythms in your family, like it doesn't feel manufactured. Like I don't have to be like, oh man, let's give. It's just like, no, it's fun. And our kids get to see us live life-giving lives, living out these rhythms. And so, yeah.
So Sammy, if there's a family who's listening, but their kids are older, they might have just all teens in the house. Obviously what made this really work for you is the fact that from the earliest of ages, you were infusing this and you were kind of like, this is a part of, this is who we are. This is the Adebiyis. This is what we do. This is what we're going to be as a family. But do you think it's possible, even if you have older kids or maybe in middle school or teenagers, you can begin to create something like
not
that?
only
It's
is
a little
possible,
tricky.
honestly, I think it might be better, right? Because the downside, if you will, to what we did is my wife and I just came up with it and we just told our kids. But if we would have done it when our kids were teenagers, I think it would be fascinating to pull older kids in and go, who do we want to be? What kind of family? Like what are some things that are distinctive of our family? And just invite them into the dreaming process. And you may come up with 20 things. I always say, like, I think it's 4 or 5 because I think that's just more sustainable. And so I think older kids, the better. Pull them in the conversation. I think there's ownership, of the vision. They probably will catch on a lot quicker than maybe even little kids will. So,
well, and I love to use the phrase that, or the notion that tomorrow is the first day of the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And, sometimes we tend to think, well, I missed the boat on that. I can't do that now. We've kind of passed that point. I mean, any positive rhythms or routines in your life, I get this a lot. Well, I'm already in my 50s. I'm already in my 60s. I can't change. Yeah. And changing is hard, but you can choose.
That's right.
And as you begin to make these choices, they will begin to compound, and you're going to be like, wow, our family's changing. My marriage is changing. My body is changing. And what you're suggesting is we can do that with our families and with the family culture at any point.
Exactly, because here's the deal. I don't know this yet, and maybe you could tell me this, but I imagine that 10 years from now, some of those rhythms may change, right? We may actually adopt some new rhythms based on where our kids are as they get older, and we get to be like, oh, wow, that's actually a really cool value that you're contributing to the family. So now we're all going to adopt that. And so I think, I don't think it's a one and done thing that you want to do earlier in your family life. I think it's an ever evolving conversation of just saying, who do we want to be? And are we moving in the direction of the kind of culture that we want our family to be?
But what you're suggesting is priorities. Setting your priorities, your big picture, your principles. This is the core values, and then we make choices in light of the core values. Well, I'm going to give you the final word. Obviously, I love this conversation, but I think you've been incredibly practical already. You've given a few tips along the way. But to families who are listening are like, man, I want to do this. Where do they begin?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, and to me, this is almost the most exciting part. It's the easiest part. Is to just sit down and dream and say, what kind of family do we want to be? Right? 20, 30 years from now, what are the 4 or 5 things that we want people to say about our family? And we may start with a list of 15 things, but just keep narrowing it down. Like, what are the 4 or 5 things? And so for us, it was just like, one of them was just like, man, Adebiyi is generous. Like, the idea of being known by our generosity just brought us so much life and so much joy. And so I think even before you create the rhythms, just having that conversation and just say, man, who do we want to be? Like, I think it's so exciting to envision the kind of lives we want to be, and then figure out what are the 2 or 3 simplest rhythms that we can put in place that we feel it's going to take us in the direction of the kind of people that we want to be.
Well, I'm an alliteration guy, so you're already helping me think about this. But you need a dream, and then you connect decisions to the dream.
That's right.
And then you need to be disciplined with the decisions to achieve the dream. How's that go?
That's perfect. That's it.
Because in many ways, it is sustainable. It's not just saying we're going to do this thing for a week. No, we're going to actually decide what is the thing we're going to do in light of the dream. But I like how you said it. Start small. Make sure they're bite-sized. Make sure they're sustainable. Don't say, you know what, every week we're going to Disneyland. That is our new family rhythm. It's not impossible. But I think, obviously, some of the things you talked about, very specific tips. And people can reach out to us. Obviously, Sammy, they can reach out to us on social media. They can reach out to us on our website, because there might be those who want to have a conversation with us. Say, tell me more. How do I... how do I create these rhythms? And do you have any suggestions for these rhythms for these different stages of life? I think we'd be really open to having those conversations with people.
Absolutely.
Sammy, great having you in the studio. Look forward to our next conversation.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Hey, thanks again for joining us today for our conversation with Sammy on 3 Words Podcast. If you'd like to go deeper with us and continue to stay more connected to DMB Coaching and 3 Words Podcast, would you go to dmbcoaching.com/subscribe, where you can actually enroll for our monthly newsletter, where you'll get all kinds of new material, insights, and tips on how to become the better version of yourself. And so we'll see you in a couple weeks.